So I wanted to go back to a second to your editing days when you were an intern at Marvel and then an assistant editor there. Did you become an editor at Marvel, or did you have to switch companies first?
I switched companies. So I did 2 internships there at Marvel. I basically just didn't want to leave, and I didn't want to give them the opportunity to have me leave. So I just kind of made myself as essential as possible. I formed a very good relationship with Nel Yomtov, whose office I was working in, and was lucky enough that he was facing a assistant editor vacancy. His assistant was moving on to a different position in the company, and he had the opportunity to hire and to interview. So I mean, of course, I wanted to interview. I was still in my senior year of college at the time, and had about 12 or 15 credits that I had to finish out. So I knew that if I got the job, it was going to mean adjusting my college routine in some way. But I didn't want to pass up the opportunity of a lifetime in my dream job. My boss Nell fully understood this, and he knew this is where I wanted to be, and he made me promise to him. And Tom DeFalco, the editor-in-chief at the time, made Nell promise him that I would finish college. So it was extremely important to both of them that I finish college. Yeah. So I ended up, becoming assistant editor there in late '93, and just in time for my first Marvel Christmas party, where I got to meet Stan Lee, which was pretty incredible. And Stan came up to me and he was like, "What do you do?" And I was like, "Well, I'm the new assistant editor on Iron Man." And he said, "You're doing a great job." And I knew that, Stan had no idea if I was doing a great job or not. But just having him say that to me and shake my hand was a great way to begin my career at Marvel Comics.
I love that enthusiasm he has, and just comes in and doesn't know who you are. And I love your work. And
he was very pleased with me, which made me very happy. So I ended up working there for 3 years as assistant editor, primarily on the West Coast Avenger related titles, things like Iron Man, War Machine, West Coast Avengers, Force Works, and then also the Fantastic Four family of titles. So at that time there was several different Fantastic Four titles. I worked on those different books as an assistant editor. And unfortunately, this was a period of time where it was kind of after the comic book glut and, all the acquisitions that Marvel had made, buying Fleer and buying Skybox and Heroes World and Malibu. And, the industry kind of came crashing down, and Marvel experienced a lot of contraction. And they went through 2 intense periods of layoffs. And, when I started there as an assistant, I think there was over 60 people on the editorial staff. The next year it was down to around 40.
Wow.
And then the year after that it was down to 18.
Wow. So you're talking about losing over half the company. And
Exactly. So the climate of the place really changed, and I was one of those 18 people, but that's because I was making $19,000 a year. I was making peanuts as an assistant editor, so they kept me on because I'm sure
your value was cheap. Your value was way over what you were getting.
But many old timers were let go, unfortunately. My boss Nell was let go, and
wow.
He had been my mentor, my partner, so that was a big change for me. And at the same time, 2 people at Marvel passed away. Mark Grunwald, who had been a teacher of mine too, and Jack Abel, who had been a long-time inker at Marvel, but he was the proofreader, and he was kind of like the grandpa uncle of the building. So for a 24-year-old, it was a rough time seeing all these people get fired.
Yeah, your mentors, you're like, oh, is this...
See my mentor leave. It had gone from that crazy, exciting time when Stan Lee was telling me I was doing a great job to the reality of corporate America. And I chose to take this moment in time to go back and finish my remaining credits in college. It was a really tough decision, but I going for my dream job, I voluntarily decided to leave and go finish my degree. That only took a few months, and then I found myself kind of needing to get back into the comic book industry. At the time, my old boss, Nell, had found a position in the marketing licensing department at DC Comics, and he introduced me to every single editor up at DC, and I think I interviewed for about 4 or 5 different assistant editor spots there, with Mike Carlin, with Casey Carlson, with Dan Raspler, with Dan Thorsland. Then I had an interview with the marketing department with Bob Wayne and Patty Cheris. All those assistant editor spots at DC went to other people, most of them internal, I think. But the interview I had with Patty Cheris in the marketing department, she liked me enough that she recommended me to Wizard Entertainment. So my first job back in comics was at Wizard Entertainment.
And this was Wizard Magazine.
Yeah, Wizard Magazine, and I went there to become their promotions and publicity manager.
All right. What did you do as the promotions and publicity manager for Wizard?
That was an interesting journey. My time at Wizard was short-lived. I know by now that I'm not too bad of an editor in comics, but guess who wasn't very good at publicity and promotions? This guy. But it was a job in comics, and I was very happy to have it. And it paid better than what I had been making at Marvel the previous year. In that position, I was in charge of doing contests in the magazine, promotional giveaways like the Ace editions they used to do, or the half issues they used to do.
I have a few of those myself.
Right? Yeah, they were fun. The exclusive action figures that they did for Toy Fair magazine. This was all stuff that I was involved in. And I was very lucky to kind of been tutored in this job by Jim McLaughlin, who had the position right before me. But I knew a few months in that I was, not doing a very good job. It wasn't for me. I tried a few times to get into editorial at Wizard, but I wasn't making much traction there. And then eventually, about 9 months in, they let me go.
Wow.
Yeah. And so this was probably my darkest period in my career. After having the dream job at Marvel and deciding to leave to go finish my college degree, and then feeling lucky enough to get a job back in comics, 9 months later I was done, fired.
Wow.
And I pretty much thought it was over at that point. So I went home, commiserated with my then girlfriend, and wasn't sure what I was going to do. And I woke up the next morning, and there was a phone call. It was from Jimmy Palmiotti, who had become a friend of mine, not only at Marvel, but also at Wizard. And he said, listen, Fabian Nicieza, who was editor-in-chief and publisher at Acclaim Comics at the time, he said, Fabian has an open editorial spot. You should go down and interview. And I was like, I'll go down today. And I'd known Fabian from my days at Marvel, and Fabian was always friendly with me and helpful to me. He was one of the early editors who helped critique my stories when I was breaking in.
Was this literally the day after?
The day after.
Wow.
Day after. And this is before, email was in wide use, and, it wasn't like I didn't, go online that night and hey, I need a job, But Jimmy had heard, and Jimmy was always making connections and networking, and he did this for me. So I went down, I interviewed with Fabian, and it was actually for an associate editor job, so this was a step up for me. And Fabian said to me, listen, basically, Mike, if you want this job, it's yours, but I can't guarantee Acclaim Comics is going to be here in 6 months, and I can't guarantee that we're going to be in this building in 6 months. I was like, I still want the job, because this was a tough time in comics. like it always is.
Yeah.
You know?
But this time especially because this was right as the bubble had burst with Image and the death of Superman and Marvel was going through its bankruptcies and
exactly. This it was all this time. This is right now. This is about 1997, and Fabian had been at Acclaim for a little bit, and he had done some exciting stuff by bringing Garth Ennis in and Kurt Busiek and Mark Waid, a few other popular writers to kind of rejuvenate the line. And I'd always been a fan of the Valiant characters. I bought all those when Jim Shooter and Barry Windsor Smith were launching the company, Bob Layton. So this was very attractive to me. It was great. And I went down there and I started working there, loved it. I was working on X-O Manowar and Shadow Man and Trinity Angels and a bunch of other exciting books. And I really, I figured I'd found a home. And pretty much 6 months to the day after I was hired, Fabian had this big company meeting and said, "Listen, Acclaim Corporate, the video game company, has decided to reduce our staff from 35 to 7.
Wow.
We're closing the Manhattan office, and those of us that remained are going to be moving out to Long Island and working from their corporate headquarters." So this was like pretty devastating to the company. I was lucky enough to be one of those 7 people that Fabe chose to keep on, and suddenly I found myself working in Long Island.
Wow.
Yeah,
that's great
for Acclaim Comics. Yeah, and that it was a strange transitional time. Acclaim Corporate didn't really know what to make of this little comic book company that they had spent $65 million on a few years before. It definitely wasn't bringing them
$65 million.
No. I mean, they did some great Turok video games and they did a Shadow Man video game, but it didn't turn out to be the investment that they thought it would be. We scaled back our production. We were only putting out a few books per month. They weren't selling many copies. And little by little, those 7 people that had been asked to join said, "I'm going to go try something else." And Fabian ended up leaving. Couldn't blame him at all. It was a real tough spot for him to be in. But me and another editor, Omar Van Malley, we stayed on because we loved comics and we loved what we were doing. And this was probably the best period of time for my growth as a comic book editor. At that point in time, I was promoted to editor, so that's where I became editor. I was working at Acclaim. And with everyone jumping ship and leaving, not only did I have to edit the comics, but I did the production work on the comics. I did the marketing work on the comics. I was dealing with printers. I was basically doing everything. I was doing my own budgets. And Acclaim Corporate gave us the freedom and flexibility to do a few books, and we tried to do the best we could with those books. But it was a great learning period for me. Not only doing editing, but learning all the other aspects.
And you had to. So
had to.
You had no choice. I mean, you had to, it was sink or swim.
Exactly.
We're going to figure out how to talk to the printer. We didn't know, and you're going to figure out how to, work with the talent and get new talent and get everything cultivated. And that's amazing.
Yeah. So this was a growth period and a learning period. Like you say, it was sink or swim. And I think that period of time really led towards what eventually I did with the Aftershock, where I, wanted to build a company because I could understand all the different aspects of what it meant to build a comic book company. I was happy there at Acclaim. I was moved out to Long Island, got an apartment there, had creative freedom on these books, enjoyed the creators I was working with. They weren't selling much, but we were really proud of them. And I thought, I'd have a home there. And the day after I moved out to Long Island and got an apartment out in Long Island, making this commitment to be out there, the day after, the phone rings. And it's Jimmy Palmiotti on the phone. And Jimmy says, "Hey, Bob Harris has an opening back at Marvel in the X-Men office. He's going to give you a call." I was like, Okay.
I love it.
And so Bob calls me. He's like, Mike, I got this opening in the X-Men office. We got $1 million. I don't know what we're gonna do. Can you come down and talk about it? I was like, I'll be there tomorrow. So I went in and interviewed with Bob and talked to Mark Powers and Jason Liebig were the other two X-Men editors at the time. We went out to lunch and essentially, again, it was a kind of a, if you want this job, it's yours type of thing. And I certainly did want it. I felt like I was coming back home.
Yeah. Especially you like growing up with the X-Men and Claremont's run,
yes.
and you had an intern there, so you already felt like you knew the landscape.
Exactly. Yeah. And the first time around, I didn't have the opportunity to work on any of the X-Men books. Now this was a chance to come back and not only work with the books, but be an X-Men editor. So that was extremely cool. And Bob Harris was someone that I always admired. He had been my boss briefly towards the end of my first stint at Marvel. I was happy to have him as my boss again, and I was really happy to be back at Marvel. I really felt like I was coming home, and in the beginning I was working on the kind of satellite X-Men books like Gambit and Bishop and Wolverine, a lot of the solo characters and Deadpool. I did Black Panther, and this was great. I was working on heroes and characters I always wanted to work on, working with great creators. It was very good to be back at Marvel. And about a year into that, there was a change in the presidency at Marvel, and they made some changes, and Bob Harris was let go. Unfortunately, Joe Quesada came in as boss, and Joe had always been someone that I was friendly with through my Wizard days and everything. So it was a huge loss not to have Bob there. But I felt lucky that Joe was coming in as my new boss, and I respected Joe's vision, everything he had done on the Marvel Knights books, and now he was coming in as editor-in-chief. So that was a very exciting time, not only for me, but for the company as
Absolutely.
well. It was a real turning point.